When you're fighting for survival, you never are going to fight for change. And that's why they keep us so broke economically, because our economic situation affects our political one. Most of us know something is wrong, right? We don't have any savings. There's nothing we can really do to change our situation. We protest, we vote, we do what we can, we speak out, but nothing changes, right? Nothing changes. But that's because we're still economically dependent on the system we're trying to challenge. That's why life feels like walking in the frickin' mud. That's why it feels like we are all working harder than ever and still falling farther behind. If life feels like a rigged carnival game, type me in the chat, because we've all got to go. Raise our voices and speak out, because us staying quiet is one of the main ways they defeat us, is we don't speak out as a group, because they have made it that to make your own way, right? To make your own way, thank you, Wilbert, is a rite of passage in America. And even though they made it so the majority of Americans cannot complete their rite of passage and make their own way, we still feel like we are personally responsible for it. That's really the first step. 1% of people have as much as 90% of us. But we feel like we did something wrong, even though we were born into this system, right? That's the big problem. We were born into this system, but we feel like we did something wrong that we have to fight for survival. Because that's really what it is, right? As soon as we start fighting for survival, other people are like, what's wrong with you? You must have done something wrong. And they're legitimately gaslighting, because when there is nothing you could do to actually fix it, right? It doesn't actually matter. Everybody argues about left versus right. Meanwhile, you can work 40 hours a week and it doesn't get you food and housing. You got to choose. Do you want food that's going to hurt your body or food that's going to help your body? Well, if you're going to pay the extra money for food that's actually healthy, you might not be able to afford your rent. Why don't we ask why? That's a big question. Why don't we ask why? Because when did that become normal? That's what the prompt is. Why is it normal to work 40 hours a week and still not feel secure, not rich, not a life of luxury, breathing room? Nobody's got breathing room. How do I know? 80% of Americans say they don't have enough savings. What's one of the first financial rules? Have 6 months of savings, right? One of the first financial rules is have 6 months of savings. Well, how many Americans actually have 6 months of savings? Not very many, right? Not very many at all. And that's why life feels like walking in the mud. We're all doing what we're supposed to be doing, yet it feels like it's getting difficult, right? We should be angrier. They have made it so that corporations are more important than your family. They have made it so that a CEO's bonus is more important than your children getting health care. Well, this is insane. We are the economy. We're the ones that keep the lights on in every single business. Yet this whole economy works against us instead of for us. Life feels like walking in the mud, not because that's the way it's always been, because when we're broke, they have control over us. That's why the majority of Americans don't have savings, because if we don't have savings, we can't say no. Think if your boss became a total jerk overnight, but knew that you couldn't leave anywhere. Well, could you quit your job tomorrow? What, do you have for 3 months? If you needed to quit your job tomorrow for 3 months, could you do that? Put a 1 in the chat if you could. Put a 2 in the chat if you can. Because I think the majority of people are unable to take even 1 month off of work, let alone 2 or 3. So they keep us broke because they know that if we're always fighting for survival, we'll never fight for change. Not because we don't want to, because we can't, right? That's the difficult part. Until the majority of Americans have at least 3 months, 4 months of savings in their bank account, we will never be able to have the leverage that we need to push back, because our economic situation is tied to our political one, right? We know something is wrong. We protest, we vote, we speak out, we push back. Nothing changes, because it's really hard to change a system that we all depend upon, right? And that's what the goal of this movement is to show people our economic situation and our political one is tied together. But this isn't just about awareness. This is a recruiting campaign, because these mass actions aren't just how we put pressure on the system. They are how we find each other. Y'all, mass action, all it does is build political pressure. And when in the past, when all we needed to do was pressure our politicians, mass action was the same, right? Mass action worked, right? But now we also need non-corporate alternatives. It's not enough just to rile up the political sphere and get the politicians to listen to us, not when the politicians have been purchased by the corporations. So non-corporate alternatives build economic power. That's what we really need, is economic power. And linking political pressure with economic power is how we actually create real leverage. Because it's only as long as we rely on corporations for our food, for our housing, for our healthcare, right? That's all that matters. Our demands will ring hollow. And God Emperor, you're fine. You don't understand this. All we're saying is, isn't it weird that health insurance companies are incentivized to screw you over, to not let your parents live so they can hit their bonus? Isn't it weird that a company could post record profits for the last 5 years and then they fired thousands of people from their workforce? It's just strange is all. And all that we're asking is, why is it that corporations are put above communities in America today, when no corporation could exist without the community being there first? That's all. No matter how rich the billionaire is, when they wanted to make more money, let's think about what a job is. A job is an owner trying to make more money. So they put up this job offering that says, I want to make more money. Does anybody want to come work for me? Well, before, the deal in America was, oh, well, if I come work for you, if I make you successful, you should make me successful, because this is a mutually beneficial relationship. The business doesn't run without employees, and employees don't get paid without the business. But it's not that the business is the only one that matters in the relationship. Both parties, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And that's one of the lies that the people up top have told us, that we ride on their backs, right? That we ride on their backs. No, they ride on ours. And the real question is, why do we accept this, right? Why is it that so many people wake up and drive to work for free because they're not getting paid for all the time they're spending commuting? Well, because our society is set up to serve corporations, right? Why is it that somebody could pay into health insurance their whole life, but then when they actually need it for life-saving surgery, it gets denied? Well, because our entire economy is set up to serve corporations. Corporations are more important than your family. And all we're doing is asking why, right? And all we're doing is asking why. In about 6 minutes, we'll get over there, Many Red. We're doing a lot of stuff already. But we had got to get everybody together on the same disease before we move to the cure. That's really such a big problem, right? Is that we all think somebody believes it's a backache, somebody else thinks it's a liver problem, somebody else thinks it's cancer, and each of those people are going to go towards a different cure. It's reducing dependence on corporations, making more boycotts and strikes more effective. But trippy, people defend them because this is the only system they've known. I view it like this. It's like a kid who lives in a shitty house. The house leaks, it's cold, it's drafty, but that's the only house that child has ever known. So if you try to take that kid to a new house and just telling them, trust me, I'll take you to somewhere better, right? It's just all they've ever known. What I really like to think about at Many Red is think about people when the automobiles were introduced. I bet you a lot of people were stuck in their ways and didn't want to switch from horses to cars, right? So if people try to sit there and convince them, well, that person grew up with a horse. Their daddy had a horse. All the infrastructure is built for horses. All the media and propaganda tells them how great horses are. Well, they're not using horses because it's actually better for them. They're using horses because they've been brainwashed a little bit. And that's all that's really happening, is that only 20 or 30% of people want this situation. And the only reason they want it is because they believe the lies, right? They believe that life is all about competition, that it's dog eat dog, that if you don't step on other people, they're going to step on you. Ew, that's so disgusting. That's not the way to live life. What we actually should be doing is recognizing that all humans have intrinsic value. And that's where we should be giving out universal basic income, because people should have their food, they should have their housing, they should have their health care. Because think about it, when the majority of people in a society have what they need to live, they actually are more productive and more effective. But the lies that they've told us is that when people have what they need to live, that they become lazy. Isn't that crazy? That sounds like some bullshit that the king would tell us, right? Oh, this is the way things have always been. Just work hard, work 20, 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week, sorry, more than 40 hours a week, and it still won't be enough for you. That's the problem. And when we ask why, they give us crap. Because it comes down to, we are working full time and still falling farther behind. So the custom car fan, the Discord link is in the bio. Would love for you to join. Because what this is actually about, this is about people who are sick of the protests not having a larger goal other than to express our frustration and to gather people together. You are absolutely right, Custom. You are absolutely right, Zave. But how do we make it so that our voices are demanded to be heard instead of just asking? Because that's the big problem right now, is we don't have any leverage because we are trying to challenge a system politically that we depend on economically, right? We yell on Saturday and we go to our jobs on Monday. And that's what it is. Power isn't how many people you get in the streets. Power isn't how big it is a No King's Day can get. Power is who controls the food supply. Power is who controls the housing and the health care. Power is the people that control the medicine and the pharmacies. If you control what people need to live, you don't have to argue with them. You don't have to listen to them. You have power over them. That's exactly the situation we are in with the corporations. They have power over us. We have to work the majority of our waking hours just to fight for survival. And they know that if you are fighting for survival, that you will never be able to fight for change. Y'all broke people are just worried about getting by. Broke people aren't worried about fixing the system. So that's why they keep most of us broke, right? So that we don't have time to say, why are things like this? Put a why in the chat for me. Why are things like this? What the hell? Because we speak out, we protest, we vote, nothing seems to change. And that's because we are economically dependent. We depend on them for our food. So why would they listen to us when we challenge them, right? So what actually changes it? Certainly isn't just me yelling. Certainly isn't just anger and frustration or protest alone. And it's also not just, drop out of the system, right? It has to be both. We have to create the link between mass action and economic pushback and non-corporate alternatives, right? Because showing up and putting pressure on the system, that gets people together. It shows the cracks, but it doesn't actually build anything new. And in order to have people come with you, follow you, you can't just talk about what's wrong. You have to build what is right. If we only protest, we get burnt out. If we only try to build quietly, nothing ever changes. We have to bring the two together. When protesting becomes a recruiting ground, and when we can turn that recruiting ground into actual local infrastructure, then that creates non-corporate options. And guess what? That is what reduces dependency. Every protest becomes stronger when we stay connected afterwards. Every action matters more when it feeds long-term economic independence. And we have to start small. We don't go from 100% reliance down to 0 overnight. We'll move from 100 to 99 to 95 and then 90. Because all we're doing is building leverage so that we can negotiate against the corporations and the politicians that are working together to screw us over. We have this crazy idea. We're going to ask every single protest, who here wants to build something stronger that makes the next protest better? What if every time we boycotted, we asked, how can we build what we need to sustain this boycott indefinitely? Because this broken system isn't going to change because we ask it to. It's only going to change when we build something better. But we can only build something better by coming together, by having a little bit of breathing room. Because where we're all at now is we do not understand the stress that is on our mental health does to our survival. We wake up in a panic. Thank you, Chicky. We wake up in a panic. And what if people had that same cushion? This is what I keep thinking about. Some of that stress went away only after you're able to have 3 months or 6 months of savings. If most people had that, my God, our country would be different. Think if people didn't have to worry about where their housing payment was going to come from. I think they'd be less of an asshole. Just an idea. Think if people knew where their next meal was going to come from and that they didn't have to worry about their meals 3 weeks in the future. That's why we're so stressed. We would act differently. We would treat each other differently. because we wouldn't all be in survival mode. But guess what? If you are fighting to survive, you're not fighting for change. A population that is just trying to survive is easy to control. So they know that if we don't have any savings, that we can't push back, that we are under their control. So that's why the question we have to keep asking is, why doesn't 40 hours a week not guarantee stability anymore? Because as long as we're waking up stressed, wondering where our payments, where our rent's going to come from, wondering where our food's going to come from, we will stay reactive, we will stay divided, and we're not going to be able to build leverage. But if we use mass action as recruiting grounds to build leverage, that's when real change becomes possible. Because that's what it really is we've got to build the leverage that is needed in order for us to fix it. Because corporations are just middlemen. That's what this is. Power is control over what people need to live. And we're actually the ones that have that power. Somebody in your county grows food. We call them farmers. That farmer wants to sell you quality food at an affordable price. But what ends up happening? Corporations make all the money. They buy out the farmers, then sell it back to us. Right? Same with doctors. We're the ones that provide the health care. We're the ones that do the hard work. And the doctors want nothing more than to give people quality health care at an affordable price. But who makes it expensive? Corporations, because they are there to get rich. Chicky, you are on the track. Because what we are doing is we are literally showing people corporations are just middlemen. They don't do anything. They don't add any value. They're not builders. They're freaking toll booths. They're rent collectors. And as long as they control the road, right, they control us. So, Chicky, right now, we do need them for a little bit because the majority of us rely so much on them for food and on them for housing and on them for healthcare and banking, that it's really difficult for us to push back when we depend on them so much. So the very first goal is to reduce our dependence. And that's exactly what I was talking about in regards to the protests and the using it as recruiting ground. We need to reduce our dependence. We reduce our dependence by coming together. Well, shit, 10 million of us came together at the last No Kings. We just didn't stay connected. What if every one of those 10 million people at the last No Kings left with a non-corporate option? Oh, shit, I've got 3 places I can go buy food from in the next week that isn't a grocery store. Oh, shit, I found this organization that's doing direct primary care that calls up doctors straight up and pays them directly. Because we are the ones that are actually in charge, or we're the ones that are actually doing the things that we need to live. We're growing the food, we're providing the health care. But because corporations recognize, oh, dang, if we controlled the essentials, if we control what they need to live, then we're always going to have power politically and power economically because they will be dependent on us. So that's really our first step. Recognize that if we are dependent on a system, we'll never change it. My very sad analogy is it's like a child who has an alcoholic parent. As long as that child is reliant on that parent for food and housing or healthcare, that kid doesn't have much leverage to force change. Please stop. Please stop. Well, the parents aren't. But if it's, please stop, I'm going to go stay at my cousin's for the weekend for every weekend. The kid didn't need to get their own house to build back some leverage. The kid didn't even need to do anything drastic. And look, they didn't take back all the leverage at once. They took back enough leverage to have negotiating power. We can't even strike. We can't even boycott. So, and then Chicky, not only this, we're in that relationship, but they control our housing. They control our food supply. That's really what it is. They control our housing. They control our food supply. Sean, if you don't recognize that corporations don't care about you, then I don't know what to tell you, man. I thought it was obvious that corporations try to screw people over so they can get richer. Money over everything. What? Even though those people are the same ones that rely on the employees, right? That's what's so crazy. But what it is, Chicky, is for some people, it's not obvious, right? And Sean, I'm sure we're not saying you're bad, but we're saying that corporation would screw you over and would fire you in a heartbeat if it helped them, if it raised their profit 1%. Because so many times these jobs know that you're stuck there. Sean, I haven't even given any kind of solution. I'm simply talking about the issue, right? Why do you think that the majority of Americans don't have savings, right? The majority of Americans don't have 2 or 3 months of savings because they know that you're stuck if you don't have savings. Why do you think until recently, and really for a lot of places, our healthcare is tied to our job, right? It's Marie, you're so true. What ended up happening was the internet made us way more productive. We ended up making so much more money for the billionaires. But we didn't see any of that money. They took it all, right? Here's the graph right here. They took all that money. The blue line is how much more productive we got when the internet came around, right? Look, they used to pay us about the same. This was 1980. If we made $1 million for the company, we got 900,000, right? Sean, it's not. This happened 5,000 years ago in rice fields in China. A bunch of workers in the rice fields developed a knife that meant they could cut grain, cut rice twice as fast. So they were hitting their production quotas and they assumed, oh, this is great. We're going to only have to work 20 hours a week. Ha! The technology only ever benefits the people up top, right? There you go. We get more productive. The pay stays the same because they don't care about you. Corporations don't see life and society as, oh, thousands of people have all developed this car, this computer, this technology. Elon Musk didn't do shit. Millions of people contributed to the automobile, to the electric car, all of the different technological innovations, but they claim that they did it all, right? That's what the problem is. Tony and the Jets love it. Great thing. And that's what we're doing. So, and we do bail them out too. And what this group is we're simply recognizing that no matter how hard we vote, no matter how much we speak out, no matter what we do, that as long as we rely on the corporations for our economic situation, we're never going to be able to challenge them, right? That's it. So what we're doing is we are building actual economic leverage that leads to pressure, because I am so sick of protesting being the goal, of just having as many people out there as possible be what we're trying to do. The goal should be for all of us to stay connected. That's what has to happen. What if every single protest, the goal was Who wants to build something that makes the next one stronger? Right? What if every single boycott, the goal was to sustain it for long term? Because right now we are focused on survival. We are fighting for survival. But people that are fighting for survival do not fight for change. And the people up top know that as long, I'm sorry, give me 1 second, y'all.